So President Trump and Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden both made several false or misleading claims during last night's contentious debate. The candidates clashed over major issues like mail-in voting, the California wildfires, manufacturing jobs, and the coronavirus pandemic. Both made untrue statements about a variety of topics, and Paula Reid takes a closer look at the facts.
President Trump made several claims without evidence to support them about election integrity in Tuesday's debate, including this one.
Take a look at West Virginia, mailmen selling the ballots. They're being sold. They're being dumped in rivers.
That statement is false. Earlier this year, a West Virginia mailman pleaded guilty to attempted election fraud after changing the party affiliation on 5 ballot request forms from Democrat to Republican. But there is no evidence that this is widespread. And when asked about the devastating wildfires in California,
every year I get the call, California's burning. California's burning. If that was cleaned, if you had forest management, good forest management, you wouldn't be getting those calls.
The truth is, scientists have said higher temperatures, stronger winds, and drier conditions caused by climate change are the real reasons why they have been worse this year. We should also point out that the federal government owns and controls nearly 60% of forests in California, which would make forest management a federal issue in many cases. Meanwhile, former Vice President Biden made this claim about manufacturing.
Because what he did, even before COVID, manufacturing went in the hole. Manufacturing went in the hole.
We found that to be false. The Trump administration actually added around 443,000 manufacturing jobs from January 2017 to this February before the pandemic hit. And on a plan for how to handle the pandemic,
between 750 and 1,000 people a day are dying. When he was presented with that number, he said, it is what it is. The president has no plan. He hasn't laid out anything.
That is also not entirely true. While President Trump has been criticized for his coronavirus response, his administration has announced plans on how to distribute 150 million rapid COVID-19 tests and a vaccine once it is available.
All right, so Paula Reid is joining us now from the White House. Paula, let's get right into, I think, one of the most talked about moments. You've been covering the president for years now. You covered him on the campaign trail. He had this opportunity to outright condemn white supremacy, and he kept on saying, yeah, I will, but then he never actually did it. Why do you suppose he missed that opportunity?
A really shocking question there to hesitate on. This should be an easy question for him, but he had to be asked several times, given specifics, and then even while he told them to stand back, he also told them to stand by, which some groups are now fundraising off of and promoting themselves through. This was really a forced error on the part of the president, and it's significant to put his hesitation juxtaposed to the words of his own FBI director. Christopher Wray has testified before Congress that, in fact, the majority of domestic terrorism threats and violence come from racially motivated violent extremists. White supremacist terrorism has been deemed one of the most serious threats facing the nation. So the fact that the president cannot denounce this, it really is one of the big takeaways of last night's debate. This is a topic, a subject that the president really has inexplicably struggled with throughout his administration, his inability to outright denounce white supremacy.
You know, Paula, there was another moment, and I want to ask you about the president's strategy with the constant interruptions, because what we really were hoping to see was a battle between these two candidates for those independents and perhaps those people who are undecided. But there was this one surreal moment where the president and Vice President Biden were asked about the 200,000 people in this country who have perished because of the coronavirus. Should have been a solemn moment for both the president and the vice president to talk about the families, the people who are going to be enjoying a Thanksgiving without their loved ones, for those who lost family members. And at one point, the president pivoted to talking about Joe Biden's collegiate record, and there was no word from the moderator. And I just thought to myself, is this what the American people are hoping for in both of these men? They want to hear something about what is going to be done to mitigate the pandemic, and instead we're seeing all these personal attacks and these interruptions. So what are you hearing from the White House if they think that this strategy of the president, the interruptions, the constant name calling, the use of a racial slur in referencing Elizabeth Warren, if that is simply catering to his base, or he's trying to actually win over some independent voters and, for example, suburban women.
Certainly a squandered opportunity there to show compassion for those families, for the people who have died. It's really interesting, Vlad and Anne-Marie. One of the president's top advisors actually just stopped over here, and I spoke with him for a moment to get his reaction to last night's debate. And with a tight-lipped smile, he just said, it was all right. And then asked us what our polls are showing. And that really tells you everything, because most of the president's advisors, particularly the ones who come out here to do media interviews, they are his most ardent supporters. It does appear that there is some recognition that last night did not go the way that they hoped. You look at our polls, most viewers walked away from this being annoyed, that not necessarily informed. They found overall that the tone of this debate was negative. This was an opportunity for either one of these candidates to really change the hearts and minds of voters, particularly undecided voters. And it appears most, even those independents, just walked away with less favorable views of both candidates.
The president tweeted literally 2 minutes ago. I was wondering what his take on the debate was. Here's what he had to say. Chris had a tough night, talking about the moderator. 2-on-1 was not surprising, something that I've seen some people suggest that Chris Wallace was biased, and so the president found himself debating two people instead of one. 2-on-1 was not surprising, but fun. Many important points made, like throwing Bernie, AOC +3, and the rest to the wolves. Radical left is dumping Sleepy Joe, zero Democrat enthusiasm, weak leadership. But we have heard, if not from some of his advisors who are walking around the White House now, we've certainly heard from some of his pundits and representatives throughout the morning, and they were talking yesterday. Any more reaction from the Trump campaign on the president's debate performance last night?
Of course, Anne-Marie, they're trying to put a positive spin on things. They say the president succeeded in his mission, which they viewed as laying out his agenda and getting under the skin of his rival. Now, if you look at this debate, it's not clear that you really got any information about the president's accomplishments or his agenda going forward. It did appear, though, at times he did get under his rival's skin. But even the president's allies concede that at times his aggressive approach may have really undermined his appeal in the eyes of voters. What's so interesting is if you look at really the first few minutes of the debate we all watched, the president was quiet. He was pretty composed, as we first heard from the vice president, who sort of stumbled a little bit. We don't see him as often as we see the president. It appeared that if the president had sort of stayed reserved and quiet throughout this, the outcome might have been more in his favor. But just a few minutes in, instead of giving people an opportunity to hear the vice president sort of struggle through an answer, he started interrupting him. The whole thing erupted in chaos. But that really isn't that much different than what we see here at the White House. People keep asking me, was this a strategy? This is who the president is. This is who he was in 2016. He was elected through this kind of approach, this kind of conduct. And at the White House, this is what we see. When he feels trapped, he turns up the volume. He lets sort of the falsehoods fly. He issues personal attacks on people. Who you saw on that stage, is it a strategy? No, it appears this is who Donald Trump is. He was successful in winning last time, and it appears that he believes just being himself could be successful again this time.
You know, Paula, before we let you go, Anne-Marie mentioned the pundits, and you're starting to see some of this punditry narrative start to play out now the morning after, where people say, well, look, you know, the American people did not benefit from this debate at all because of the way both men behave. But to be frank and just to be honest, if you watched the debate last night, yeah, there were moments when Vice President Biden hit back at President Trump as he was trying to speak, but at least there were moments where we were also able to hear what Vice President Biden planned to do should he be elected president. He talked about bringing community leaders and police organizations together, for example, to address violence in our cities and to address police brutality. He talked about his plan for combating the coronavirus. He talked about whether or not science, when it comes to climate change, is an integral part of his platform. We didn't get a lot of that from the president. In fact, I'd venture a guess that if you watch that debate, you didn't hear at all about what President Trump would do differently from what he has done over the last 4 years. So I guess the question going forward will be for the White House, for the Trump administration, does President Trump plan in the next debate to actually put forth what his ideal for the next 4 years in this country should be, because we didn't really get a lot of that from President Trump. We did hear some things from Joe Biden, although some of those things, as you pointed out in your piece, needed to be fact-checked.
Yes. Last night, though, really was a squandered opportunity for anyone who wanted to lay out their agenda. Well, yes, the former vice president was able to give more specifics, and the president, when pressed specifically on what his health care plan is, he resorted to attacks instead of offering specifics. Most viewers watching this, again, they did not walk away feeling like they were more informed or better understood the platform of either candidate. So right now, if you're at home and you're wondering, hey, am I ever going to get another stimulus check? What's going to happen with my mortgage? What's going to happen with my student loans? There weren't a lot of answers for you last night, and there's a lot of blame to go around, even though disproportionately it does appear that the president just empirically interrupted more often and gave fewer specifics. But all three men throughout that really seemed to be struggling to retain control over the situation, but that offered voters very little insight into their options in November.
Excellent analysis. Paula, sorry, I know our producers are yelling at us to go. One quick question. Vice President Biden and Kamala Harris have both said that they want to continue with these debates. There's 2 more to go. They want to do them. You're starting to see a narrative develop from some supporters of President Trump that the vice president doesn't want to debate anymore. What are you hearing from the White House as to whether or not Donald Trump wants to engage in these other debates?
So I've not spoken to the president's actual top advisors about this question this morning, but the pundit class, the folks who are paid to spin this, they're taking an interesting line of attack. They're suggesting that anyone who questions whether we want to do this 2 more times to the president's, this debate style, they're suggesting that those people are only saying that because they feel that Joe Biden lost this debate. I'm looking at that based on my experience of the Trump campaign and wondering whether they have and will commit and actually show up to the next 2 debates. Because again, and speaking to top advisors here, there is not an overwhelming feeling that the president truly won this debate or this was a good look. So it appears they may be trying to lower the bar for accepting and continuing to accept the next invitation. So I don't know whether we'll have 2 more debates. At this point, we should plan to. But it appears they're very sensitive to this line of inquiry, and they're already spinning it, which to me suggests that they may believe there is something in it for their candidate not to do this another 2 times.
Paula Reid for us at the White House. As always, Paula, we appreciate it. Thank you so very much.